Hi, I'm Steve Casely from CBT Nuggets, and welcome to this nugget, which continues our review of the Prince2 deliverables, and this is part 3. And just to remind you, all of the deliverables are available to you. All of the deliverables I'm reviewing in these 4 nuggets are available to you for download and reuse from nuggetlab.com. So again, as we're going through any of these nuggets, reviewing all of the deliverables, and you say, hey, that would be useful, I could use that, just go to nuggetlab.com and it's there for your download and reuse. And in this nugget, we're going to review 5 more of our Prince2 deliverables. Again, presented in alphabetical order, and in this instance, I think the alphabetical order is going to work against us a little bit, so I want to spend just a few moments reviewing the chronological order in this overview description as well. But before we go there, in this nugget, we're going to review the lessons learned report, where we're going to gather and consolidate all of the lessons learned from a stage, from the project, and ensure that they're in a format that's ready to be reused as part of our corporate best practices. We're going to review probably the second most key document in the Prince2 library is the project plan. I hope I don't have to remind you what's the most important document that comes out of Prince2. That's the business case. Well, I believe the project plan is the second most important of the documents, because the project plan is going to define how it is we're going to achieve the business case, how we're going to complete all of the work to ensure that we're satisfying the expectations set out in the business case. Where we're going to review a bit of a working document. It's the product description. There will be one of these documents for each of the products, for each of the deliverables that the project is going to deliver. Not our Prince2 deliverables, but the project deliverables. So the analysis document, the design document, we will produce in advance, upfront during planning, and a description of what the product is, what the deliverable is, and what the expectations of content for that product is going to be. We'll also review the project brief, which is the introductory document that we're going to use to first kick off the project, and we'll also review the project initiation document. And again, this is where probably the alphabetical presentation I'm taking in this approach is our worst enemy, because the project brief is the first document that's going to be produced in your project, and that really is the document that launches the startup of our project. So the project brief gets presented, has the very raw skeletal information, as we'll see when we review in details of what's in the project brief. We go in to start up a project. At the end of start up a project, we're then going to produce the project initiation document, which is going to expand on the project brief and put more detail on it. And then at the end of the initiate a project, we're going to have the third document, which is our detailed project plan. So again, bear with me. I want to stick with my alphabetical presentation for consistency, but recognizing that the alphabet is our enemy and the project brief is our first document. We will literally cut and paste, as you'll see from my outline from the project brief. We're going to create the project initiation document. That's our second document. Again, we're going to cut and paste, and we're going to produce our third project management document, which is our project plan. And as you'll see in these documents, there's also an element of the business case. So there'll also be some cutting and pasting from their brief and the initiation document to produce the business case, but most specifically, there'll be cutting and pasting to produce the project plan. So enough of the overview, and apologies for my alphabetical presentation. Let's focus on the contents of my templates for these 5 deliverables, and let's look at the lessons learned report. The lessons learned report is primarily, at least in Steve's humble opinion, the lessons learned report is primarily a document that's going to be produced at the end of the project. At least the lessons learned report is going to be a document that's produced at the end of the project and carried forward into our corporate best practices. But I do totally agree and support Prince2 in that the lessons learned report is going to be produced at the end of every stage. But my expectation or my practical experience is the lessons learned report that comes out of each stage is more of a lessons learned from this last stage that I can improve and better on for my next stage, where my lessons learned report out of the project is going to be a more generic, a more overarching lessons learned report that we can use and apply throughout the organization. So let's have a look at what's in our lessons learned report. Again, having a look at a table of contents, we have the executive summary, the overall review, the review of the useful measures, and the lessons learned log. And if we look at these in a little more detail, the executive summary is pretty standard. We're going to summarize the key lessons learned on the project, and we're going to ensure that we do the cause and the resolution. But recognizing that this is an executive summary, and there probably will be multiple lessons learned, or at least I hope there will be multiple lessons learned on your project, we're not going to simply repeat the core document in our executive summary. So I'm suggesting we want to take the top 5, or whatever a reasonable number is, but the really heavy hitting, the most important lessons learned, and get them into the executive summary that everyone picking up this document is going to key on the big key lessons learned. Or as I suggest later in this overview, alternatively, and actually this is my by far preferred approach for the executive summary, if after I've captured my dozen lessons learned, if I can group these lessons learned into 3 or 4 main groups, then I would present the group lessons learned. So I have a group of lessons learned around team productivity, and generically speaking, my lessons learned for team productivity would be to listen to the team. Now, there's going to be more details in the body, but again, I really like to be able to do the grouping of my lessons learned and present the generic summarized lessons learned at the group level in my executive summary. But enough of the executive summary, let's get into the meat. So the overall review. Again, recognizing that a lot of people are not going to want to review all of the details. They're going to want a bit of a summary. They looked at the executive summary and say, yeah, that's really good. It looks like Steve's done some good work here. It looks like there's some valuable information. What more did he talk about? So this is where I'm going to provide a summary of what worked on the project and therefore needs to be repeated, and what didn't work and needs to be improved. And hopefully I can also provide some lessons learned and some recommendations. And I'm going to say in this overall review, we need to pay specific attention to how well did our delivery approach work. We decided we were going to use traditional development, or we decided we were going to use an agile development approach, or we decided to use a package implementation, or whatever delivery approach we decided we were going to use. How well did that work? Did I do anything out of the norm for risk, for quality, for communications, and the various other project management principles? Did my innovation work well, in which case it should be repeated, or did my innovation have a few challenges and therefore probably either needs to be improved on or taken as another Thomas Edison? I now know yet one more way not to invent a light bulb and not repeat it again. And again, what specific controls did we apply? Were our tolerances appropriate? Did the project never go out of tolerance? That's, in one sense, we're going to pat ourselves on the back and say, there, I delivered a project that never went out of tolerance. But on the same behalf, maybe our tolerances were too broad and they need to be narrowed down a little bit. So again, a bit of an executive summary, but an executive summary with a little more detail. And then we're going to review what specific measurements did we do. And again, this is a bit of a continuation on the tolerances, but how did we measure our results against the plan and the baseline? How did we collect our actuals? Did we collect actuals from the team members on a weekly basis? Did we collect actuals from a corporate timesheet? Did we put them into our project scheduling tool? Did we manage them in a separate spreadsheet? And how well did all of that work? And include a very specific review of the quality measures applied. Did we apply audits? How well did they work? How effective were our peer reviews, and so on? And then the real meat of this particular document is going to be the true lessons learned log. And this is where we're going to show the dozen or 15 or however many true lessons learned on the project. So this is the raw material, and everything above has been sort of the presentation of this raw material. So what is our lessons learned event? And I'm calling it event, and that's consistent with Prince 2 because I don't know if this is a positive or a negative. Is this a lessons learned and to be repeated, or is this a lesson learned and to be avoided? What was the impact to my project? What was good or what was bad? How do I know that this particular lesson learned is happening? And how can I, again, be proactive against it? Are there any early warning indicators? And again, this is very much associated with the concept of it's a bad lesson learned, and here are my early warning indicators to keep from ever happening it again, and any specific recommendations. The key to the Lessons Learned project is put the time and attention into this Lessons Learned project at the stage so we can improve from stage to stage, and at the end of the project so we can improve our overall corporate best practices for project delivery. Our next deliverable is the Prince2 project plan. Prince2 typically calls it just the plan because we recognize that this document could be a project plan, in which case it's outlining the approach for the overall project, or it could be a stage plan, which is the subset of the project plan defining the processes to be followed for just the next stage. Or if it is a very large, complex project, the stage plan could be further decomposed into team plans for individual teams working on a part of the stage, and the stage is part of the project. So again, this same template will apply for projects, for stages, for teams, but because as a minimum, all projects will have a project plan, may or may not have stage plans. For simplicity, I will simply call it the project plan through the rest of this discussion. And if we have a look at the table of contents, the table of contents is going to start off with a plan description, an overview of the work to be done on the plan, whether it is the project plan, a stage plan, or a team plan. It's going to identify the specific prerequisites required to be in place before this plan can be a success. We're going to look at external dependencies. Are there activities that must take place? Are there things that must be in place, must have happened in parallel or before this project can happen? Are there assumptions and constraints? What additional information did we discover in the preparation of this plan that is contingent upon its success? What lessons learned from previous projects have we incorporated into this particular plan? What are the monitoring and control aspects that are required on this plan? What is the project budget? What are the specific tolerances? What is the tolerance for myself, the project manager, in schedule, in cost, and so on? What are the tolerances for our project board, and so on? What are the various products that the project is going to produce? And finally, what is the detailed schedule? And if we look at each of these in a little more detail, the first step is the plan description. Provide a brief overview of the plan and its scope. And this is consistent whether it is a project plan, a stage plan, or a team plan. It's important that people picking up this document know that this is just a team plan and therefore may be not near as rich as a project plan. So that's again, we're just trying to do that level set to make sure that people understand this is a stage plan versus a team plan versus the comprehensive project plan. And I believe it also helps to provide that very brief overview of the project and objectives, just so that they understand exactly what the purpose and objectives and scope for our project is going to be. This overall plan description should be relatively short. I don't believe it should take more than a page. As a matter of fact, I think you should be able to pull this together in a half page or less, because the real meat is later in the project plan or the plan itself. Now, recognizing that there may be some prerequisites, it's important to call them out and make sure our project board is aware of them and prepared to sign off on any of the prerequisites. So document any prerequisites that have to be in place for the project to be a success. This could be our organization must secure external funding. Our organization must be approved for a government grant. This may be specific business requirements. In order for this project to be initiated, the business must receive approval for a new product, or the business must obtain approval to enter into a new market, or anything like that. or there may be some pending legislative changes that the project is going to accomplish, to address. We're being proactive. We're developing the project plan now, expecting some legislative changes in the future. But let's face it, if the legislation doesn't happen, we don't need the project. And our project constraints can be internal or external. They can be things within the organization that's going to need to be in place before our project continue, or they can be things like legislative that's external and have to happen before our project can start. Very similar to that is any external dependencies. Those were prerequisites. These are parallel activities that must be required for the project to be a success. And when I say external, it's external to the project, does not mean it's external to the organization. So again, for example, we're developing a new project to develop new software to support a new product. We have approval. That was our prerequisite for the product development. But in parallel, there is a business stream happening that's doing the R&D and the research for the project. There's another parallel project that's happening to develop the new office space or the new warehouse space or the new customer service space for this new product to be delivered. So there's lots of parallel projects or parallel work that's required for the project to be a success, and they all must complete. The R&D, product development, the development of the new space, and my project to develop the new software must all complete before this project is going to be a success. As always with any key planning document, we need to review and document any planning assumptions and constraints that came up through our planning process. We're going to specifically call out any lessons learned that we gathered from our corporate repository and have included into our project approach to ensure that, again, we're following our best practices, we're learning from lessons learned from other projects, and we are doing our very best to ensure our project is going to be a success. We're going to document the specific monitoring and control process that's going to be applied to this project. So how are we going to capture timesheets? How are we going to determine our budget? How are we going to interface with the quality department? How are we going to do all of the monitoring and control, the key project management activities that we have in place for our project? Obviously, no plan would be complete unless we documented all of the project costs. And often the project costs will need to be put together over some type of project timeline. If this is a relatively short project covering only 6 months, your finance department is probably fine with a single number that says this project is going to cost $50,000. But if your project is large, involving multi-millions of dollars and covering multiple budget years, finance is probably going to also want a bit of a timeline across the project costs so they can do appropriate, budget management, time management, financial management. We're going to specifically document all of the tolerances. So we have all of our tolerances that we're going to measure, and we're going to say the PM's tolerance for cost is 5%, the PM's tolerance for schedule is 8%, the project board's tolerance for cost is 15%, the project board's tolerance for schedule is going to be 20%, and so on. We want to define all of this information up front, so are there no surprises? There's no, I wonder if I should be. It all has to be defined in the project plan. And then we're going to specifically call out all of the deliverables, all of the products that our project is going to produce. We want to give a brief overview of what the product is. We're going to define its goals and objectives, and we're going to basically capsulate and summarize all of the product description information into a very concise overview for our project plan. And these product descriptions will also be going forward into the CI log for the active management of each of the products that the project is going to produce. And then finally, no plan would be complete. As a matter of fact, a lot of people, when they think about a project plan, think only of the project schedule. Hopefully by now, through Prince 2, you realize that a project plan is far more than just a timeline. A project plan is everything we've discussed to date in this particular deliverable, but the project plan does include the project schedule, which is typically put together in a couple of formats. Typically, it's going to be some kind of a graphical representation, and the most common graphical representation I'm aware of is something called a Gantt chart, which lists your project tasks on the left side and a calendar view on the right side, with bars defining where each of the work breakdown structure elements are going to be produced. And for those that can't read a Gantt chart, we'll typically call out and provide a table of the key project milestones and the dates that these milestones are expected to be completed on. The project plan is the culmination, the summary of all of the project planning. And as you'll see as we go through this nugget, the project plan is going to start in the project brief, is going to be fleshed out more in the project initiation document, and then finalized in this comprehensive document, which is our project plan. But before we get to those prerequisite documents for the project plan, the next in the alphabet sequence, and again, the alphabet is kind of my enemy in this particular nugget, but we'll deal with it. The product description is our next deliverable. We're going to produce a product description for every product that the project is going to produce. We just discussed doing a bit of a cut and paste exercise from the product description and putting them into the project plan, but there's going to be far more detail for every product that the project is going to produce. We're going to produce one of these for every product in the project. This is not a formal deliverable per se in that it doesn't have a cover page and doesn't have a revision history, but it's still key that we produce one of these product descriptions for every product. We present it to the business owner, and we get confirmation that if we deliver exactly what it is that we've defined in this product description, we're going to satisfy your expectations. So we do one of these for each product, and we identify who the business owner for this particular product is going to be. It may be our single product owner, business owner, project acceptor, or if there are different subject matter experts in the organization, there may be different owners for different products. But this document, again, defines exactly what it is that the product is going to do. So we're going to provide a very brief overview of the specific product. And I believe understanding why the product is being produced will really help ensure that my team stays focused. There's nothing like taking a work package and say, here, go do this. And they ask, why am I doing this? And you just say, doesn't matter why, just go do it. That's not going to motivate the team. That's not going to help them stay focused. But if they have a paragraph or two, it's a brief overview of the purpose of the document. If they have a brief paragraph or two explaining why this document is necessary, why this product is being produced, I think it really helps keeps them motivated on delivery of the product and help keeps them focused on only the work required to specifically address the business requirements. Then we move into the composition, and this is the key element to our product description, a recommended table of contents for the product. Because nothing to me helps clarify exactly what this product is going to deliver than a table of contents. And if we have a table of contents that's got 18 chapters, it's telling us this is going to be a very rich, robust document, A1, minimum of 18 pages, one per table of content. But no, if it's got that many sections in the table of contents, the expectation is it's going to be a large document. But more importantly, it's going to truly tell us what the composition of the document is going to be. One of those sections in the table of contents is a review of existing system. Another section is a review of alternatives. Another section is review of available packages. Another section is a discussion of custom development. It's really defining what it is that this particular product/deliverable is going to be producing, going to cover, which helps manage the expectations that we're going to derive to deliver the product specifically to the business requirements. Then we move into the derivation. What are the inputs? What material does the team need to look at to prepare for producing this document? What are the existing systems? What are the packages to be evaluated, whatever? So it helps ensure that only the relevant inputs are going to be used. It doesn't give the team the time to say, oh, well, I just thought I would go out and do a random web search, and then I went to the public library, and then, no, these are the specific inputs that are relevant to the production of this document. And again, it helps us ensure that the team remains focused. The format and presentation. Now, to a large extent, the table of contents is going to also help drive our format and presentation. But on the same behalf, we still need to define what type of deliverable, what type of product this is going to be. Is this a formal deliverable document? Is this a presentation? Is this a wiki? Because the work that we're going to expect our team to complete is going to be very different based on the type of document. If we have any specific development skills that the team member needs to be able to successfully complete this document, we're going to call them out. And then defining in advance the acceptance criteria is key to successful completion of the product. If we know now what the acceptance criteria is going to be, we build our document to meet that acceptance criteria and only that acceptance criteria. And maybe I've just had some bad business users in the past, and having that acceptance criteria defined in advance prevents them from waffling at the time of acceptance and say, yeah, but I really think. No, there's no I really think. This is what it is. You said you needed to see to accept it, and I've satisfied this. So please accept this. If you need to process a change, if we haven't satisfied your requirements, we have ways to deal with that in Prince 2. But simply waffling and refusing to accept a document until out-of-scope work is applied is not the way to do it. So the quality criteria and the tolerances, how many defects, how many processes can be in place, are critical to successfully completing our product description. What are the quality processes that we're going to apply? Are we going to do peer reviews? Are we going to do audits? Do we have deliverable checklists and so on? What is the quality methods, and what type of skills do we need to apply those? And finally, who is going to be the presenter, who is going to be the reviewer, and who is the final approver of the quality processes and of the product itself? By producing a comprehensive product description in advance, we're avoiding all of the potential issues around unsatisfied requirements, and we're going to very significantly move our project forward to successful conclusion. So with the project plan fully defined, we now can go back to the origins for the project plan. The alphabet is now being kind to us. We're back to the origins of the project plan, and we look at the project brief. The project brief is the document that's going to be produced by the business. This is purely a business document. And the project brief is going to be that document that the business is going to present to corporate management and say, I have a need, I have a eureka moment, I need a project approved, and here's my project plan to outline my vision for the project. Could you please approve work to allow me to start up a project and do the first step of Prince 2 to validate whether my idea, my eureka moment makes sense, and that is our project brief. So recognizing that we have truly looked at a lot of the detail in our thorough discussion of the project plan, I'm not going to go through each of the sections in our table of contents in a lot of detail. I'm going to focus just at the table of contents for this document and our next document, outlining the expectation of the type of detail that's going to be in the project brief in terms of the executive summary. And again, executive summary is an executive summary. It's going to summarize everything that is in the particular document. And because this is, I'm going to call it a begging document, this is the document the business is going to take forward to senior management to get the project approved, the executive summary deserves a great deal of care and attention to make sure it absolutely delivers the message that is needed to get the project approved. The project definition, it's going to be very brief. It's a eureka moment. It's an idea, but this is where the business owner, the business themselves, are going to begin to flesh out and define exactly what it is that the project should take on. It's going to evolve. It's going to move into the project initiation document, and we've seen the same content in the project plan. So it's going to get greater and greater detail from we go through from starting up a project to initiating a project, and we have our detailed project plan. Same thing for background. Why do we need this project? What is my problem? What are my issues? Why did I take this project brief to you for management for approval? Here's my project objectives. Here's what, if this project is a success, we're going to achieve. And here is my expectation. Here's my desired outcome. If you approve this project, and if Steve, the eventual project manager that's going to deliver this, satisfies all of these outcomes, I'm going to be a very happy business owner. Where possible, they're going to start to define the project scope. Here are the business functions I need you to address. And here are the business functions that are probably not relevant to this project. If there's any knowledge of project tolerances, and again, my expectation is a lot of this will be very brief and very introductory at the project brief level. Funny that that should be consistent with our name of our document. But here are the business areas impact. Here's the main business area this project is going to be undertaken. But here are other business areas that will be involved with the project. And we're going to start the outline business case. It's not the detailed business case. We haven't put a lot of time and attention into it yet because we don't even know if this is going to get approved. But we're going to start to flesh out the business case and where the business understands specific product deliverables. They're going to start to produce the overview of the project product descriptions. There would not be a formal project description document at this point in time, but this is again where we're beginning to define the expectations. It's consistent with and in a little more detail from the project objectives and desired outcome, but these product descriptions will eventually evolve into the full product descriptions just reviewed. And we'll begin to flesh out and define the project organization, the roles and responsibilities, as well as all of the assumptions and constraints that came out through the preparation of the project brief. Again, the project brief is our first cut at the project plan. It happens to approve the project, and it's the input to starting up the project. And our final deliverable in this nugget, and in this instance, both chronology and alphabet are being kind to us. We just discussed the project brief. Now we have completed start up the project and we have the project initiation document. There should be a lot of cut and paste from the project brief into the project initiation document because as we'll see when we look at the table of contents, there is an awful lot of similarity. And I'm not going to go through the similarities. The expectation is we cut and paste the raw information from the project brief. We put it into the project initiation document, and then we add a little more detail. There should be a little more detail in the project definition. There should be a little more detail in the objectives, or the background and the project objectives. The project objectives and outcomes certainly should be better defined as a result of start up the project. The scope and the exclusions, again, there's going to be more detail. We're not at the full project plan stage yet, but it certainly should have evolved. Probably a little more concept for the project tolerances. The business areas impacted probably will be almost a direct cut and paste. The business case, last time we called it the outline business case. This time we're calling it the business case itself. Still is not the formal business case, still is a precursor to the business case, but will be far more detail. But now we're beginning to get into the uniqueness. The product descriptions, again, cut and paste from the project brief, but should be a lot more detail in the product description than this point after starting up the project. And now we're beginning to define our approach for delivering the project. Now this is where we're beginning to flesh out the initial drafts of our project planning document. So we're going to define our project approach. Is this going to be, we're going to define our quality management strategy, which will evolve into our quality management plan. We're going to start to define our configuration management strategy, which will evolve into our configuration management plan, our risk management, and our communications management. So these are all precursors to the formal plans. And then again, we're going to begin to flesh out the details. Here is the overview for our project plan. Here's our expectations for project controls, an evolved project organization, roles and responsibilities, and of course a documentation of any of the assumptions and constraints that have led to the creation of this project initiation document. Second in the series for project startup. This concludes our review of these 5 Prince2 project deliverables, and in this summary I'm going to throw the alphabet out the door and talk about this in pure chronological sequence. The first is the project brief. The project brief is our approval to start, or to call out the specific Prince2 process. This is our approval to begin start up the project. It's produced by the business, and it is a very high-level overview description of the problem and their desired solution. They present that to management, they get approval, we go to start up the project, we go through our start up the project phase, and we produce the project initiation document, which is the second in the sequence. It's got more detail, but it's still at the Steve's validation of the Eureka moment. We spent some very brief upfront time where we started up the project, validate that yes, the brief makes sense, and yes, we've added a little more meat under the bones for the project initiation document, and yes, at a high level, this project should cost $50,000 and this project should be able to complete it in 6 months. And we present that for approval, and the management will approve that, and we produce our detailed project plan. And this is true outline of the project. Here's the detailed plan, here's the detailed cost, here's the description of all of the key product deliverables, here is everything required to successfully address the requirements defined in the project brief, fleshed out by the initiation document, and defined in the project plan. One of the components of the project plan is the identification of the product deliverables or the product descriptions. And from that, we will produce a product description that I'm going to call working document. It is a document that's going to be presented to the business for validation because it defines the contents of the product, of the deliverables, but it is not a formal bound document with a lovely cover page and a table of contents. It is a 1 to 2 pager per product that defines exactly what it is the product is going to produce and what the quality expectation for the product is going to be. And then finally, we're going to have a lessons learned report, which gives us lessons learned at the stage, which is typically lessons learned at this stage that's going to help us improve for our next stage. And we're going to also have a lessons learned at the project level, which is going to be applied to, included in our corporate best practices, so that we get continually better at delivering projects. This concludes part 3 of our review of the Prince2 deliverables. I hope this module has been informative for you, and thank you very much for viewing.